and thanks very much for being with us today. We greatly appreciate it. Last week, the governor of Ohio signed a piece of legislation citing energy costs and economic growth concerns that put a 2-year freeze on Ohio's renewable energy mandate that the state had imposed on itself. I'd like you to consider this hypothetical situation going into the future. Assume that the Ohio Renewable Energy Standard was included in its state implementation plan, the SIP, and to comply with the EPA's existing plant rule. Assume also that the EPA approved that SIP, okay? In that scenario, would the state of Ohio maintain its discretion to freeze the renewable energy program in order to protect the interests of Ohioans?
The state would continue to have flexibility if circumstances change in the state to replace one particular measure with another, and the proposal lays out the process by which a state could do that. So there's opportunities for states to adjust their plans along the way.
Let me ask then, would the state have to get that approval from the EPA?
If a state wants to replace one measure with another, they would come to EPA and say, this is what we're doing.
Okay, and how would the process overall work, and how much time would it take for a state to get that implemented then, if they want to make a change?
Well, we work with states all the time in circumstances where they wish to change their state implementation plans, and so we work with the state to prioritize those actions and try to meet the state's needs in terms of timing.
And then also, would Ohio be subject to Clean Air Act penalties if they didn't first obtain any EPA approval before they make any implementation to a change at that time?
I don't believe so, Congressman. The provisions in the Clean Air Act for penalties are pretty clearly laid out, and there's a pretty clear process for when those could be invoked. So I think in any circumstance like this, we would work with the state to make sure that they could do what they needed to do as long as it met the ultimate goal.
Well, just to be on the safe side, if we get that back to the committee, that they wouldn't face penalties if that would occur?
Sure,
Okay.
we'll answer further.
Okay, let me, and also just talking about a little bit about Ohio. We get about 70% of our generation in the state of Ohio comes from coal. Mm-hmm. And in my district, which I have about 60,000 manufacturing jobs, it's even higher than that we're coal-based generation. And up in my area of the state, I also have a very unique situation, and I have a lot of electric co-ops. So how would the EPA's Clean Power Plan avoid putting these small co-ops at a competitive disadvantage, and especially their customers? Because again, in my district, when you look who they're serving, mm-hmm. you're talking about a lot of it's very unique. I have 60,000 manufacturing jobs. I also have the largest number of farmers in the state of Ohio. Mm-hmm. How do you put them not at a competitive disadvantage under the Clean Power Plan? Because, again, you've got the farmers, you've got these small businesses out there, you've got a lot of retirees. Yeah. What happens? How do we make sure they're not at a competitive disadvantage?
Well, this is where the design of Section 111D and the flexibility in the plan really shows its value. It's because it will be up to the state of Ohio to design a plan that works for the state of Ohio. I come from Indiana, and so it's very similar in terms of the types of
well, if I could just interrupt, because you coming from Indiana, you know that just a few years ago, especially when the president was talking about his cap and tax plan, that when Ohio was at about 78% generation in coal, Indiana was at about 90%. So they're really in harm's way when it comes to these new rules and standards. So excuse me for interrupting.
No, I gave you the opening. I actually don't think they're in harm's way. I think that the way we've designed the plan is very respectful of the fact that states like Ohio and Indiana do rely heavily on coal. They have different opportunities than states with a different energy mix, and they can design a plan that that addresses concerns related to small rural co-ops, public power, particular concerns. This plan works. It doesn't require any particular plant to meet any particular emission rate. So, and it looks at emissions over a long averaging period. So that's another way in which the plan gives lots of flexibility for the state to be able to adjust to its particular needs, its manufacturing community, its rural communities, cities, whatever the particular needs are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time
Yeah.
has expired, and I yield back.